Okay, so today we're going to talk about domain and range of continuous graphs. We learned how to do that for discrete points. Well, today we'll talk about how we do this for continuous graphs. And we'll also learn how to write our domain and range using inequalities. All right, before we get that started, we're going to just take a look at this. How many cheese balls are on the shelf here, do you think? We'll pause here. Okay. So again, domain is our set of possible x values, and range is our set of possible y values. Okay. All right. So let's go over a few things before we actually start with domain and range. So just a quick reminder, these are our inequalities, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. Really what I want to focus on is this right here. So this is something called a compound inequality. And you'll notice it's got this part right here, and that is x is less than or equal to 3. So if we think about that up here, x is less than or equal to 3, that would be, here's 3, that would be all the numbers less than or equal to that. Okay, so now this other side is this part right here, and that is right here. Now we usually don't write inequalities this way. We usually flip them around so that the x is first and the -5 is here. But now I want the alligator mouth to still be chewing the x, so I need to flip that around as well. So then this is x is greater than or equal to -5. So that would be, here's -5, and it would be everything greater than or equal to going this way. Now, if we look at where these overlap, that actually is what this means. Okay, so it's both of those together. And if you'll notice, that actually is from -5, where they overlap, all the way up to 3 and stopping there. So that orange line is this thing right here. So what this compound inequality really means is all numbers between -5 and 3, including -5 and 3. So everything in between those. So we're gonna use this a couple of times and get used to writing compound inequalities. But again, it really just means x is everything in between. Now it's kind of written that way. X is in between these two numbers. And that's really what that means. Fancy way of saying that. Okay, and then we're also going to talk about infinity and negative infinity a little bit as well. Okay, let's try one. So today, we're going to learn how to find domain and range of continuous graphs. And how do we do this? Well, for domain, your x values, remember, so you're going to start along the x-axis and you're going to scan from left to right with your pencil when you're doing this. So I'm going to switch back to red. Now, we're going to notice that everything is going to be in between a sum value. So we're going to write a compound inequality, and I'm going to set it up the same way, like this, with an x in the middle because x is domain. And then we're going to have the small number here and the bigger one here. Okay, so now we're going to start on the x-axis and we're going to go this way until we run into the graph. And you'll notice that's right here. Okay, and what number is that? Looks like -1, -2, -3. And then we're going to write that here. That's our smaller number. Okay, and now we keep going till we get to the end of the graph. And that is right here. Okay, so that's +3. I'm going to put that on the other side of our compound inequality. And you have just written the domain, again, using a compound inequality. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing for our range, for our y values. Oh. I'm going to erase this here. And, okay. So range, same thing, except now this is a y, Range represents our y value. So we're going to start along the y-axis and work from the bottom to the top. You can see that up here. From the bottom, okay? And you're going to go until you bump into the graph, which would be right here. And that is, again, this is going to be our smaller number here first. And then we keep going until we get to the end of the graph. And that's right here. That's positive 3. Okay, so we have just written the range and the domain for this continuous graph. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to show you some other weird things that can come up. We'll go through that. All right, let's take a look. All right, let's start with this graph on the left here. Okay, so we'll start with our domain. And I'm just going to start by writing these. Okay, now we start on this and we go this way. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this goes, and this just keeps getting wider to the left. So actually this just goes wider and wider and wider. And this one over here also does the same. It just keeps getting wider and wider and wider. And it goes on forever. So actually, when we're coming up here along our x-axis, where do we bump into the graph? Well, we start way, way over to the left as far as it will go, which would be negative infinity. Meaning that actually just keeps going forever to the left, and that would be negative infinity. And then we keep going this way. Well, this keeps getting wider and wider and wider, so that actually goes all the way to positive infinity, right? So get rid of that a little bit. Okay, so what does this mean? This really means the domain is everything. From negative infinity to positive infinity is all the numbers. Okay? Now, the range, let's talk about that a little bit. The range is going to be a little bit different. So that might feel a little weird for the domain there for you. It is kind of weird with the infinities and negative infinities in here. All right, let's set up our range. Now, these keep going down as well. They get wider and wider, but they also go down. So when I'm coming up here and I say, where do I bump into the graph? I bump into it right away because, oh, that's a bad, I didn't draw that very well. Okay, negative infinity. So this keeps going down to negative infinity, and that would be the first place I stop or run into it. Okay, now if I keep going, where does this graph end? Well, actually, this does end somewhere. It stops right here. And let's see, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this goes all the way up to positive 5. So the range is from negative infinity all the way to positive 5. And that's how I would write that. So this time we don't have specific numbers for some of these, except for the 5. The other ones have infinity and negative infinity. Okay? So kind of weird. And then often we would replace those later on, but we're not going to worry about that here in Algebra 1. We're going to talk more about that in Algebra 2, about how we would clean that up a little bit. Okay, so let's try one more. All right. So again, here we go. Domain, this one keeps going to the left. It also keeps going up. This one keeps going to the right and up. So as I'm coming here, this would be negative infinity. And then I'm going to keep on going, and notice this keeps going this way. So that would also go to positive infinity. Now, my range, I would start from the bottom here. Okay, and I run into the graph right here. So this is negative 2. And now I need to know, where does this keep going? Well, these keep going up this way. So this is going to go all the way up to positive infinity. Okay? And that's, you've just done domain and range for continuous graphs. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Okay, you can give this one a try as an extra example if you'd like. We'll pause here if we have time. All right. domain and range of continuous graphs. Your assignment is 6 problems finding the domain and range of these kinds of graphs. All right, good luck.